we can just keep it a gas analyzer. And I'm not a scientist by trade by any means. And so I went back and we had a decision to make. What do we do? Because the guy came back to me, Jonathan, and he said, I'm really interested in your invention. I think we should really try and do something with this. And I had a choice. I either go for the steady position in the MOD, where everything would get signed away to the Crown, and it would be a great life, great career, great people, but I had the opportunity to do something that really was driving me inside, and that was to develop one of my own products. So we sat down, we talked about it for quite a long time, and we decided to go and raise some money in London. And we set about making a business plan. We had a friend, or I had a friend called Neil Melville, who managed a series of people's portfolios in the city, and he knew some people that may have interest in the medical and the automotive sector. So he arranged a meeting for us to go down to London, and the two of us went down in independent trains. We had everything ready. I had the business plan, heaven myself, as ready as you can be for these sort of things. Got out of the train, got onto the station, went to meet Neil. I said, I'm here, my business plan's here, but I can't find my colleague. We had 5 minutes to get to the restaurant to meet the investor. So he said, well, get back to the train station. So I went back to the train station, went on to the tannoy, and started saying, Jonathan, where are you? Are you here? Can you come out and join us for a meeting? So I waited for the train station, and Jonathan eventually came out. We ran to the investors in the restaurant, and we had nothing. We had the business plan was relatively meaningless. It was just a concept. It was a vision of a gas analyzer with a container in an automotive sector, and we did a bit of diligence on the markets with Frost & Sullivan and Mintel and so on. But I think it was more about selling us as what we believed we could do. And he was in. He said, I'll join. And with a few other investors, a small consortium of angels, we raised 250k back in 2000. And we had 3 years to develop the research and identify the actual type of technology of the gas analyzer, which is in spectrometry. And in 2003, we presented the prototype to be validated, and it failed. The whole thing failed. And there were all sorts of questions that were asked, and one of them was the science in particular. And my colleague got to the point where he couldn't do it anymore. And the investors turned around and said to me, well, you've got 3 months to make good, or it's over. And it's sink or swim time. So what I had to do was go out and find a scientist who could actually turn the situation around for us. And I found Professor Albert Crow, the head of physics at Newcastle University. And he found a very simple solution to it by introducing a new type of discharge device. And the way the system works, which is where the gas analyzer really started, was a container which was flat packed, single use, evacuated, so you could breathe into it, or you could stick it on the emission, on the exhausts. And you can then put that container into the machine, and it's completely encapsulated, so there's no recalibration issues, everything's digitally reorganised, and there's no contamination from the previous sample. Well, it worked this time round. And in 2003 we could actually demonstrate a gas. It wasn't a particularly significant gas, it was carbon dioxide, and then we moved on to nitrogen and a few other gases. And then between 2003 and 2007 there wasn't a lot of money around, but enough to keep us going to actually get to the point where we could determine volume and gases. And during that 4-year period, I focused on a particular market application, which was diabetes. We found that the medical healthcare market was the next emerging one. And we started doing some serious research into that, and we realised that diabetes had a real opportunity with the registration of acetone as a gas in comparison to carbon dioxide and oxygen. And the way, in a nutshell, the way it works is a series of signatures which you can overlay, and on the real-time data, or the real-time breath sample, or the real-time ambient air sample is registered against that, and you can spot the difference. I mean, it is simple when you get down to it. So in 2007 we got to a point where we actually had a position where we could wave a little flag and say, we've done it, we really have done it, we've got something tangible here which people can really buy into. So I went to Connect Yorkshire, and I gave a presentation to investors in the Leeds Football Club, and there was quite serious interest that followed that. And there was one particular interest. There are a couple of organisations that were interested, a few private individuals, but perhaps the most important one was a gentleman who had scientific background who could take it to the next level as well. And the last 2 years have been about creating a pre-clinical trial unit which can stand the test of the clinical trial. We got that developed this beginning of this year. We presented it to the medics who had taken us 2 years to actually get on side, because they're quite sort of not interested at the beginning. And then they got on side. We got the VNF in Austria to validate the data from what we were saying. We got the blood samples, blood plasma, blood glucose, and the breast samples done up in Dumfries Royal Galloway Infirmary, and that correlated against the blood samples. We could differentiate between diabetic 1, diabetic type 2, and non-diabetic, and that put us in an exceptionally strong position, because not only that, but during the same time frame we managed to land Oxford University, and the head of physical and theoretical chemistry laboratory there, Professor Gus Hancock, is now full-time with us, and his team. We acquired his technology and his expertise and team, and we're now we've cornered the market basically. And the situation is that there's a world-class team taking it forward. The market's cornered. The patents have been predated back to 2000, 2001, so we are dominant in our field. And the investors today to put in. 2 months ago we raised 1.25 million, and we're actually oversubscribed. We had to cut back to that because it's now got to the point. This is Nobel Prize area. This is it's the real deal, and we know it works. And I guess
what's it doing that wasn't being able to do before?
What it does is it allows people to breathe into a container, and that is encapsulated. So, for example, you put the container into the machine, and within 10 seconds it determines the constituents of your breath. So, for diabetes, not only can this machine do diabetes type 1 and 2, but you can progress on to cancers, asthma, and various conditions like that, all in the same test as a screening method. And what this screening method allows you to do is broaden your scope in doctor's surgeries, so that when you're doing your urine sampling and so on, you can only ever have, there are false negatives in urine sampling. So when you go to be screened, you can go away and you can still be diabetic. You know, between 500 and 100,000 and 1 million just floating diabetics in this country. And what our piece of kit can do is for about 2.5K, this is in a doctor's surgery, and for 50p a test, the people can either charge out at a higher rate on a privatised method or not, and you have a wider screening scope, and you can capture people at a very early onset stage rather than a more developed stage, because the gas analyzer itself is a very accurate means of determination. So you're into say 9 parts per million, whereas current the blood machines up in Glasgow can only go down to about 50 ppm. So you're right at the beginning of knowing what's going on. As a spin-off of that, back in 2003, when the gas analyzer went tits up,
That's another scientific term.
The investors also asked me if I could try and create a quicker route to revenue, and I looked at the intellectual property that we had, and in particular the container, and my wife and I were talking about having children, we were talking about travelling, and I came up with a flat pack single-use baby bottle, and this is it. It's out in the market, it's in Boots and Mothercare, John Lewis, Ocado, and Babies R Us throughout the UK. But the flat pack baby, it's a single use flat pack baby bottle, so you fill it, screw it back on, take the cap off, teat self-erects, and then you feed to the baby, and the pouch just naturally collapses. So there's no air that actually gets into the baby.
So it's completely sterile in the
it's
bag,
completely
so you don't need to worry about boiling water and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's right. And the benefit is it's a single material, including the teat, which is one of the reasons why it took so long. And you can throw it away with peace of mind. It's completely recyclable.
Is that completely recyclable depending on who's willing to recycle it?
It is completely recyclable. Well, it's down to the responsibility of the consumer to actually get it recycled.
The colour bit is a single plastic, because then you have to split it to recycle.
It's just
Took the whole thing in your green bin and it's done.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there are various spin-offs around that. But the real market interest for the Western world is the convenience of it all. And in the third world, with this company, they're looking at, it's actually, there's a lot of issues with AIDS. And after the age of 6 months feeding a baby, women aren't allowed to breastfeed after 6 months now if they have AIDS.